session engineering for another project, and this one's a little bit different. Our friends over at McCrums Motorcycles in Portadown, Northern Ireland, got talking to me because they know I have a bit of a thing for most things Italian, and for Supertwins, and for race bikes. So they've sent me this wonderful little Aprilia RS660, and I'm going to turn it into a super stock Supertwin. So this is the McCrums Motorcycle RS660 Aprilia. It's done about 600 miles on the road, then the chaps fitted the genuine accessory Aprilia exhaust system and the official sort of map that goes with the exhaust. Then they've dynoed it, and apparently it did 93 horsepower, and then they delivered it to me. And when it turned up, it still got a number plate on it, and headlights and all the rest of it. So I did ask if I could ride it, and they said yes. So I rather took that to heart. So you may also notice it's got a lever guard on it, and it's got a noise test sticker, because the bike's been for a proper little ride. So before I took the Baby 8 for a little date to Cadwell Park, I thought I probably ought to go and do a few road miles on it, just get a little bit of a feel for it. It didn't take long for me to slightly force the little Aprilia. It's such an absolute fun bike to ride. It's light, it's easy to ride, everything's nice and accessible, it's comfortable, it's actually quite economical, and down a little country back road, it's an absolute hoot. I absolutely adore this little thing. It'll also sit quite happily down a straight line with the cruise control on, enjoying the sunshine, or it'll go absolutely banzai down a little back road. It's brilliant! So I'm just back from my first proper little road test on the Baby Aprilia, and I have to admit, this is a bit of me, this is. I quite like a little middleweight bike, because everything's a bit more accessible, the speed is more accessible, they're more fun to use, you can actually use all of it. And I will admit, some days a big fast 200 horsepower proper superbike is brilliant because they're so exciting, but they're not necessarily actually fun, whereas this is fun. I've also got quite a lot of legroom, the bars are quite high, I've got cruise control, I was doing over 50 miles per gallon, it's comfortable, I could actually go somewhere on it, the wind protection's decent, but if you get it down a little back road, and you've got the throttle wide open and you're just banging it up and down the box through the quick shifter and the blipper, it's just really good fun. The chassis is really nice because it turns really easily, so you can just flick it exactly where you want it. It's not trying to rip your arms off, it's not trying to push you wide or do anything really unpleasant. It's just really good fun for sort of pointing and firing it through the corners. It's just a great little motorbike. I think it's fair to say I rather like the little Baby Aprilia. So I've brought the little Baby Aprilia along to Cadwell Park for a session or two, just to see what it's like. It's whispered its way through noise test with its little Aprilia pipe. I've yet to set my tyre pressures, but I'll be setting them just a couple of PSI sort of lower than normal. The track is quite cool, so I don't need to go particularly low on my tyre pressures. The other thing I've done is put the dashboard in race mode. So I've got a lap timer which works off the flasher button, and if I want to I can swap between time attack and challenge mode. Challenge mode has a little bit more traction and anti-wheelie and stuff, I think. Time attack takes the ABS off the rear so I can back it in if I want. I never have done before, so I don't imagine I'll try it now. So I think we'll start on challenge because that will give us a tiny little bit more safety margin. The lap time will be kind of funky. I've also made a slight adjustment to the suspension. I've set the sags at both ends at about 30mm, give or take a little bit. And on the front I've set the rebound, the dampers from 19 clicks out from fully in to 10. So I've got a little bit more damping. There isn't actually very much you can change on the suspension on these. So hopefully it'll ride all right. So a few minutes to go. Let's go and pull some wheelies on it. So okay, down the straight, 93 horsepower isn't exactly setting the world on fire, but the difference is, compared to having 193 horsepower, you can use all of this and you're not going to get yourself in too much trouble. And it's still going to be decent enough to pull about 130 mile an hour down the straights at Cadwell Park, so it's no slouch. And then the difference is when you get to a corner, this thing's an absolute joy. You hit the brakes that are really, really good, knock it down through the auto blipped gearbox, which is nice and easy to use, and then you just turn in and the thing will go exactly where you want it to go. The chassis is outstanding. It just turns so easily, it holds the line nicely, it never really gets itself in a flap even without a steering damper, and then you can just open the throttle and absolutely pin it, and the bike is just so utterly confident and inspiring. Anybody could ride this thing fast. My mother has never ridden a motorbike, and I reckon she could ride around Cadwell Park pretty swift on this thing. And then the difference is, I can go and take it around the fast group, and overtake a few people on prepped up Fireblades. It is a proper weapon.
You'll have to excuse the noise of a donkey old classic bike and a noisy generator. So, I've done my first little session on the Aprilia. I'll probably actually only do one today because I need to actually ride my other bikes and do some setup work. But this thing's a right giggle on a track day. The suspension, I will admit, is a bit too soft for fast track use. It sort of starts to wallow a little bit and you can't really trail the braking because the forks don't really like it much. But it goes exactly where you point it. It's nice and easy to ride, it is entirely non-threatening, and it'll pull wheelies over the mountain and bits, and it's generally a right giggle. I didn't actually put it into time attack mode. The traction, especially sort of over the mountain, where it's getting a bit confused with itself, was a little bit interruptive, but not too bad really. Right, and I thought, a 1 minute 49, yeah, it's not lightning fast, but I was a little bit cautious because I don't normally ride on road tyres. And I was aware I didn't want to crash somebody else's road bike. So yeah, that was blooming good fun. The shifter and blipper are really, really good. Having a blipper on a twin's just ace. Yeah, I think with a bit of suspension in it and some slightly stickier tyres, that thing would be a proper weapon.
It's not every day you get to ride around on a pair of twins, and I have done today and it's been blooming great. There are some definite differences because I back-to-back my little Chinese Super Noodle twin against the little Aprilia. Now, my little Super Noodle bike today, we're on a standard engine, but it's got bored out throttle bodies, a big airbox, a full arrow system, and power command and bits on it to map it, and it's making 83-ish horsepower. The Aprilia, that's got a completely standard engine, the Aprilia accessory Akrapovic, the Aprilia Akrapovic exhaust map, ignition map, and that's making about 93 horsepower, so it is 10 horsepower up, and when you ride them both, you can tell it's 10 horsepower up. It does rev quite a bit more as well. The CF Moto has, if anything, got a little bit more drive at the bottom of the rev range. It's a little bit torquey at low down, but the Aprilia is definitely faster once it gets breathing. Now, I was faster on the CF, but then I should be because it's a fully prepped race bike. The biggest difference really was suspension. The stuff on the Aprilia is good. On the road it's, nice and soft and it's got to be useful on bumpy roads and bits. The stuff in the CF, in the front I've got blingy Biturbo pressurised gas cartridge kits in ZX10 forks. In the back it's got a Maxton. And it's just a really, really good setup. I've been working around on setup with it today and I've got it pretty close. So, that's the biggest difference. A few other bits. The electronics, like the shifter and the blipper on the Aprilia, are loads smoother than the setup I've got on the CF. Well, I don't have a blipper at all. It's really nice to have traction control on the Aprilia. Even though it was on a low setting, it's still a little intrusive in places, but in other places, especially when you don't know the limit of the road tyre, you can just pin the throttle open and let the computer fix it. It never actually had to. I was actually quite impressed with them road tyres. So yeah, the CF was back-to-back first session out about 4 seconds quicker. Once I sort of nailed down some lap times about
6 or 7 seconds quicker, but a lot of that is tyres and suspension. In fact, I'd go as far as say it's all tyres and suspension, and a little bit I didn't want to crash somebody's road bike. So all in, this CF is good, but the chassis wise it's as good as it's ever going to really get. The Aprilia is right at the start of its development. By the time I'm finished with it, it's going to be an absolute weapon.
Thanks for watching, and join me again next time when we start race prepping the 660.